SEOscience.com.
Welcome to SEO Science. I'm your resident host, Richie Billing, and delighted to be joined today by my colleague, Mikolai Tomczyk. Miko, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm kind of new at Billion Media, but I've been doing SEO for 7 years now. I'm very experienced with it.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot from Miko. But it's I think one of the best things about like SEO is that there's lots of different ways to do things, and when you work with other people, you can bounce ideas off each other, try different things out. And I think it's definitely the best way to approach SEO is being more community focused and orientated and sharing ideas and things like that. But yes, thanks for joining me. What we're doing today, we're having a little look at technical SEO as it's becoming more and more important as the SEO game gets more competitive. And one of the key aspects, I think, which has particularly become more important after the last round of Google updates is user experience. Bit of a tricky concept for some people in the SEO world. So, Miko, you're a bit of an experienced head on this one, aren't you? On UX. Do you want to give us a bit of an overview about what it is and why it's important?
Yeah, no problem. So the user experience has been a big part of my work ever since I started doing SEO. Again, as Richie puts it, that it hasn't been as emphasized in the past. Only in the last 2 years has the helpful content update as well as the mobile first update come in, which have emphasized how important UX is to the overall ecosystem of SEO and everything to do with websites in general.
Yeah, it's become so important, doesn't it? And it covers quite a wide range of aspects of SEO as well. I think because certain parts of content writing has got to be user friendly. It's got to be delivered, like written in an accessible way. But then it'll also cover like how fast your site loads and stuff like that. So we are going to cover it all. We've got a lot to go through. Just as an overview, to give you an idea what you can expect. We're going to be looking at accessibility in quite a bit of detail. We're going to be looking at site speed and performance. And lastly, and probably one of the most important steps, which people do tend to skip on, is testing. Testing the experience and getting an idea of what your users are going through when you visit your site. But it is, I think, UX, you don't really see it as often as you should, I don't think, in SEO. And I think it is because people do find the concept a little bit vague, but also it's quite complicated as well. There's a lot of analysis involved. And as we'll see, it does get quite technical. So, Miko, why do you think it is more important than ever to focus on your user experience?
So with how the web development and web design landscape is moving towards more complex and intricate websites, which have designs that make things, while being more complex, more designed via the complexity of them, it makes it more simple for a general user to use and like make purchases and things like that. This has then made it so that if you are not on top of the world of your websites, like if it doesn't work as properly as your competitors does, you are more likely to lose out on sales, conversions, and everything you can really think of. And that's more of like an even, while it's related to SEO, it's more of like a human element to it all. Which while SEO helps to check, and obviously it helps out in the rankings because Google has emphasized it, is more concerned with making things easy to use and making websites, well, be just simply good to use in general.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And like you notice little subtle changes over time. I mean, like one obvious one for me is when Amazon added the buy now button to the
Yeah.
actual sales page. It's you could just do it there and then you've seen it now with Google trying to deliver information without people having to click on sites. They can book holidays and everything now, and then you've got featured snippets and stuff like that. So people want the more immediate answer, don't they? And they're becoming less patient when it comes to clicking on a site, scrolling through. And we're even seeing like features in content now where they'll before the article there'll be like a summary, like all the key points. And it is people just want things as he delivered to them as easy as possible. Um, yeah, it's crazy. And like you say, the competition elements, because if your competitor has got an easier process, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, have you got any tips for doing any analysis on these kind of things? Like, where would you start if you felt like you had a problem?
Well, initially, I think the first thing you would do is just try to use the website yourself. Like if you are noticing that customers and users in general are just dropping off, maybe with a high bounce rate, which is another way you can check it. If your bounce rate is really high, that probably means that your user experience isn't very good. Um, a high bounce rate can also sometimes mean that the website is doing its job, i.e., getting the purchases fast from one page to the other. However, for the most part, if your bounce rate is high, that is a negative thing, as it means that users are bouncing off your site. In order to test this, like I said, you just try to use the website yourself and see if you can get a complete customer journey, which is what they call it in CRO. Just how many clicks it takes you to get to a purchase, how easy it is to use. This stuff becomes, it's not as obvious when you're working on a website, because naturally when you're working on a website, it's like a completely different experience to when you're actually using the website. And a lot of people have trouble like reconciling that fact, and trying to like stick to a design that doesn't work, but because they are attached to how it looks and how it functions already, that they think it will be the only way that it can be.
Yeah, no, I've been there with some of my early websites, and you just think that this design is great, but like the data speaks for itself. So we'll come to the bounce rate and look at that in a bit more detail a bit later on. But like just doing something simple like plugging your website into Google Analytics and then just tracking these things, this will help you give
Yeah,
you
exactly.
a great
Yeah.
idea of the people's experiences. I know the latest Google Analytics isn't you're not a fan of it, are you, in terms of the data?
It took out a lot of the nitty-gritty data of what you can get out of the users. Like for example, one of the best features from Universal Analytics was that you could check the behavior flow of users, which showed how often people are going from one page to the other, which isn't a thing anymore that you can check. You can check which pages have been gone on by them, but you can't check exactly where they went throughout the entire journey,
Yeah.
which stops that analysis process there. However, it still has a lot of useful tools, like you said. Bounce rate and average time spent on the page are both very handy things to keep a track of.
Yeah. I know you're a fan of heat maps as well.
Yes, but that would be heat maps are mainly used by developers, but I think the inspector is one of the best ones you can possibly use. That basically it tracks individual customer journeys, as well as tracks the heat map, so like where every user is clicking on. If you want to try it out, you can give it a go for free on a website up to I think it's 10,000 clicks a month, which isn't a great number, especially if you have a existing customer base. But if you're just starting out, it can be a really great way to start analyzing your website.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, give it a go and see how you get on. One of the big focuses that I feel like search engines of shifted towards is accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big part of user experience now because everyone takes in data and content in their own way, really. Like some people might prefer audio, some people might prefer a video, some people might love reading. Like we were talking the other day about if you were looking for like advice on how to do something. Some people would go to YouTube and search, and then other people will prefer I would prefer the step-by-step written guide. And that's just because I like to take in the data and then try and visualize it myself. So, like I say, people do it in all taking data in all different ways. And also people have impairments, and it's important not to exclude anybody and to make your data and your content as accessible as possible. So I know when we've been redeveloping sites, haven't we, in the last few weeks and months, we've placed a lot of focus on accessibility features and making sure that it is viewable by everybody. What do you want to? Where do you want to start? Like, there's quite a broad spectrum, isn't there? I think let's if start on like a technical level.
I think we might be best off starting with alt text because
Yeah.
that's like the most common things that SEOs will tell you to do. Like when you're first starting out, I remember in my first job, one of the main things that we got told to do was just start including alt text on everything with keywords inside. That used to be like a strategy that you would use quite often. It's always best to have the keyword in there for the most part. But what's more important is, say there was a person using a screen reader because they can't see, and they are trying to read your website. So you have you have an image, and sorry, you have a H1, then you have a little bit of text, and then you have the image itself, then the alt text inside the image, and then the caption. If all three of those, the H1, all four of those, the H1, the text, and the image, alt text, and the image caption, all use the same keyword, the screen reader would then read that as basically the main keyword every single time as it's passing the site, which isn't a great user experience. It might do okay for the SEO side, but as far as user experience goes, it would be it's not a great idea to include it. Alt text obviously is the text that is used to replace an image when it's broken, which was the old main way that people included it for. But now, obviously, with more accessibility being more emphasized by Google and just the internet in general, it has now become more of a descriptor rather than something you just do to increase the number of keywords.
I think it's because we've been doing a lot of alt text stuff.
Yes.
Getting the right image is more important than ever, because if you want it to be descriptive, but you also want it to relate to the keyword, so that's always a good little thing to keep in mind, I think, when it comes to alt text.
Yeah.
Another thing we've been focusing a lot on is colors, and in particular the WCAG guidelines. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are there essentially to tell you what makes websites the most accessible. The document is pretty long, obviously. There is a lot to read if you want to get understand accessibility in full and all the different things that go into it. But it is worth reading because it will literally quite literally tell you everything that Google and by extension your users will expect when it comes to it. And when it comes to colors, it gives you like a good understanding of what colors you can use. There's also a lot of tools on the web that adhere to these guidelines, which you can then use to generate color palettes if you're struggling with coming up with a good color palette for your website or a page on your website or feature.
Yeah, there was a really good website that we were using called Vengage, VENNGAGE.com, and you can just select the color and it'll give you the palettes and that you can use on your website then, and they're all WCAG friendly. Proper awesome tool. Yeah. So it's something that it doesn't take long, but it's going to make a massive difference to user experience. And what I like little plugins. I mean, sometimes they can interfere with the performance of your site in terms of like site speed and the way things load. So you just need to be careful. But there are some decent plugins if you use WordPress, like accessibility plugins, and it creates like a little menu on the side of the window, and people can click on them and then choose what preferences they want. So they can make the text bigger, smaller. They can change the contrast settings. So it's really good, giving people the ability to have it in their own way. Yeah, and also I think what's becoming more important now is in terms of content, different ways of delivering things. Like we were saying, people like to absorb information in different ways. But being quite creative with things, I think, there's a good opportunities to be seized. I think, especially with all these new AI technologies popping up. I mean, have you seen any interesting developments and features in the way that sort of written content is delivered?
Well, yeah, actually, the most recent example is both Bard and ChatGPT. Bard is Google's proprietary AI that they use in the search engine and will be becoming more and more standard as time goes on.
Yeah, is it called
And
Gemini now? I think, is it?
oh yeah, you're right. Yes, it got updated
Yeah,
to Gemini. That's right.
yeah. This is whoa, strange. Switched that
Yeah,
name fast.
I preferred the name Bard, to be honest. It was
Yeah, I
great.
thought Bard was a
Uh,
good name.
But yeah, and then ChatGPT was integrated into Bing quite recently. As far as for a casual user, I do believe Bing is probably better now than Google. Google has recently, in the past a year and a half, overly emphasized the importance of like shop results. So if you Google like for a product, you might as well be looking at a store page for that product. Whereas when you use Bing right now, you can have a conversation with it and it will tell you everything that you might want to know about a subject or topic, and it will provide you with links to those websites, which well, in the future, maybe it might become a lot more lucrative to be featured on Bing. Currently, a lot of SEO agencies don't really emphasize Bing, but again, it comes standard with Windows. And it's always a sale or a conversion that could be missed out on if you're not properly adhering to it.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always check the Bing stats on our sites just to see if has been any change, but not yet. But I think, like you say, once people start using it more and enjoy the experience, I think it'll probably shift quite quickly.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to say is it's just about content readability. Obviously, it depends what kind of content you're writing about. Like we were talking about a subject about me, like a medical related subject the other day, and there was no way you could write content that was simple. It was just too complex in terms of like the language used and stuff like that. But there are guidelines that you can follow. I think it's called like the Flesh Reading Ease
Yeah.
guidelines.
I think it might be the Flash scale, to be honest,
Flesh
or
scale, yeah.
Fleck, maybe something like that.
Flesh, yeah. It's like a weird name. It's like FLETSCH, like a German
Yeah.
name.
Hmm.
But basically that just measures how or the ability, what sort of grade level and comprehension level a person needs to be at in order to understand your content. So what was the sort of main standard that people should aim for? Was it ninth grade, was it?
Yes, it was around the ninth grade reading level. However, obviously, yeah, like you mentioned, there are going to be some subjects where that will simply be impossible. If you're talking about like aerospace engineering, that probably by itself is going to get you up to like a college graduate, college student level, and same with medical. Those are just always going to be that complex. There isn't really anything you can do about it. I mean, you can try to simplify them. You could probably get them down to grade 11 if you really try, but at the end of the day, Google understands that this is a complex subject, and they're going to be complex. However, with things that are like a lot more simple, like there is absolutely no reason why you can't hit like a year 9 level of reading comprehension.
Yeah.
And that should be the gold standard to look for, I think.
Yeah. It is, and if you're looking to sort of change your content so that it is a bit more accessible, then I always recommend looking for any long sentences. Try and break them up into shorter sentences. Try and avoid long paragraphs. Break them up into maybe 2 or 3 lines max. And then as for the word usage itself, try not to. It seems like a funny bit of advice, but I always remember a literary agent telling me off for this: is try not to be a writer and just write in simple and clear terms. Like strive for that clear message. And if you're using imagery to sort of emphasize your points, just try and create a vivid and clear image in someone's mind. And that's the best way to go about making things more accessible. But you can use tools as well. I mean, you could use AI, I imagine, to change the reading level. I don't know if you'd want to risk that with your content.
Another important factor in that is that going back to UX is if you make things too complicated for someone to read, why wouldn't they just go to a competitor again? Like where they can understand it and it doesn't make them like feel maybe dumb for not getting what they're meant to be getting from the website.
Yeah.
Like in a way that it can be the difference between a lot of sales as well. Like it isn't just like a simple number, because by the way that scale itself works is it goes from like well, it basically matches the school levels or levels of schooling. So most people will be around a year 9 to year 11 reading comprehension level. And when you write something that is really complex and that only people that have like a high level of understanding / education can get it, then yeah, you are just locking yourself out of sales that you could easily be getting.
Yeah, there we go. There's a reason why it's important. Let's have a look at site speed and performance, because this is definitely becoming more and more of an issue as things become more competitive as well. So to give us a bit of an overview then, sites need to be fast, need to load quickly, because for every second that takes for your site to load or for a page to load on your site, the percentage of, or the probability of a person bouncing away from your site is going to increase massively. So you just need to be instant. You want your site to just load, and even as you're using it yourself, if you're having to sit there waiting for a page to load even for a few seconds, it's just frustrating. And
Yep.
imagine what your users feel. So like it's becoming more and more important. And also related to this is things moving around your page or not loading properly. And that again is a big problem, especially on like tablets and mobiles. If you're switching a screen around from left to right, then it's gonna stuff moving around. It might not go in the right place. Yeah, I've seen some funny examples. So, Miko, do you want to tell us a little bit about mastering site speed and performance?
Yeah, so if you haven't already, which I'm sure you probably already are aware of this tool, but Google provides a very handy tool. You can either use the inspect element and go into Lighthouse to check it, or you can simply just go on Page Speed Insights and run your page through it. This will give you scores, the most important of which are located at the top, which are LCP, FCP, CLS, and basically the different lengths of time that it takes for the largest contentful element to paint, and then the first one to be painted. And you can see that can give you an idea of what how fast your page is being loaded, how often it is struggling to load pages, and how long it takes for each page and element to be loaded. And that can be the reason why it's so important and become more important recently is because a mobile first update, as Richie pointed out, because of the mobile first update, as Richie pointed out, there you go. The speed in which sites load and the different devices that it loads on. So like on mobile, you want it to load as fast as possible and work as well as possible. So things like the CLS, which are the cumulative layout shift of how like the page might switch around or like create errors basically when you try to go on it, and it might move like the menu to the left, might move the menu to the bottom so you can't access it instantly. Those can all create problems that you then will just have to fix, because if you don't fix them, then people again won't be able to use your website and they won't be able to go on the customer journey that you want them to.
Yeah. I mean, it's when it comes to fixes though, it gets quite technical because you're talking about like JavaScript, CSS, stuff that I know absolutely nothing about. So
Yeah.
if you're on WordPress, you can, as I am a bit of a plugin hero. So I always I love a plugin. So you can get premium plugins like WP Rockets, Perf Masters, all-in-one SEO. They offer site speed and performance options to like basically tackle the issues that are being generated with the JavaScript and the CSS so that it becomes basically it strips them away and optimizes them and makes your site load faster. But CSS, particularly like removing certain CSS lines of CSS code from your theme, it can create issues. So you've just got to be careful when you're using these plugins, like take backups of your site, and just remember what buttons you options you selected so that you can unclick them if it does go wrong. What are your experiences of fixing these issues, Miko?
Yeah, so my at my last job, I worked at a company called GarageRye, and what the largest issues were number one, the page speed loaded really slowly because there was a video on the website which took up the entire, sorry, on the home page, which took up the entire top side of the page in its entirety. As soon as you loaded in on mobile or desktop, it was there. And because it was a video, it took forever to load. It wasn't a fast, didn't use the facade method, and it just basically, yeah, loaded it every time, took forever. So we had to work fixes around that. One of the fixes that we did was we tried removing the video and putting a facade over it so that it only loaded when you clicked on it. And that did help, but it didn't look very appealing because the users would be confused as to like, oh, this looks like a video that's meant to be playing. Like, why is it not playing? So then what we had to do was we basically cut down the video slightly, which then allowed us to use that video, put it in, and because we've compressed it and made just the most important parts of it work, it made it a lot faster just by doing that alone. And that was probably the biggest change. Like the time to load the site went from like 10 seconds to like 3, just because of the compression of the web video.
Yeah.
Obviously, it was a lot faster with the facade method by itself because it didn't have a video to load. But yeah, that was a big help that we managed to fix that in the end.
Yeah, like things like compression, like smushing all your image file sizes, just making sure that they're as small as they can be before you upload. I mean, you were talking before with me about tools. What was the one that you showed me?
FinView.
FinView.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite good.
Yeah, that one is usually what you can do is change the quality. It will change the quality of the image. So if you are hoping to have an image that is like a very high quality, it will most of the time make it look slightly like pixelated in order to compensate for the fact that it's reducing the size by like 70 or 90%.
Nice. Yeah, and you can actually set your own files like limits, size limits. So that is really good. But it does change the image, and another benefit, you can save it in whatever format you want, like the WebP and JPEG, PNG. So that's a good one. You can also get like plugins that will automatically compress images once they're uploaded. That's quite good. My little secret one, which I think is the best compressor for images on the internet, is Pinterest.
Yeah.
Honestly, like if you upload an image to Pinterest and then download it again off Pinterest, it'll be like 10 kilobytes. Even if it was like a 10 megabyte image, it'll just come back as like hardly anything.
Makes perfect sense. So they have to conserve the space on their website. So
Yeah, that's
the
what I
lower they
mean.
can get it.
Yeah. So that if you want to go to Pinterest, and that's the best place. So we've covered a bit there. We mentioned a few other things before. Like ways to fix loading and site speed issues. Lazy loading is also good for your images, and deferring loading until interactivity. That's a good sort of option that you might see on like WP Rocket and these plugins. And basically what that does is the site doesn't load until someone like actually uses or starts using the page. So it's quite handy. And we also wanted to mention something about interactivity, didn't we, Miko?
Yeah. So one of the one of the things that is emphasized a lot in the Wakaga is accessibility. So we mentioned it before of serving the content in a lot of different types, whether that's be audio, video, or any kind of way that you can serve it. But another one is interactivity. So interactivity covers everything that has to relate with where users can click on and how to help them along that way, and like what you can do to help that. So whether that's larger buttons, whether that's ways to activate things on the site without having to touch anything, which can be a lot like a really complex thing to do. Then by improving that, you can then not only help conversions, not only help the user experience, but it just helps like the how the site performs in the first place. Because easily understandable buttons can just make a world of difference in a lot of different scenarios. Even for your just testing the website, like if you can easily click on everything that you want, then it makes it a lot easier. In marketing, there is a concept which is I refer to as the big orange button. So this something that you click on, namely is big and orange, and you can just click it and it buys you the thing. That is like the most simple way of distilling UX and what's important about it. It's having that easy way to get exactly where you want without having to put a single bit of thought into it.
Yeah. There you go. I think it all comes back to ease of use, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's what interactivity is all about. Having buttons, having things to click on all the time.
Nice. So lastly, before we finish up, we just wanted to talk about testing user experience. So we've talked about a few different methods. It's important to test on both mobile and desktop, and especially on mobile, you want to test it on different browsers, because we have run into issues where certain things have worked on Chrome but not on Safari, and because so many people use both, you've got to account for all of these kind of things. So Miko, I know you're a great tester of things. You're always looking to break things as much as you can. What sort of advice would you got for anyone out there who's looking to do some proper rigorous testing?
Oh yeah. Well, starting off, you just look at your website and you ask yourself, how would your average person use this? You don't have to worry about reading comprehension levels or anything like that just yet. It's just simply you try to complete the what you want your users to complete, whether that's like a contact form, whether that's like a conversion button, whether it's anything like that, and figure out how easy it is for you to use it, number one, and how easy it could be for a potential customer. You'll be surprised as soon as you start doing the testing yourself of how complex it can actually be to figure out everything you need to know about this. One of the things that I like to do is I like to include other people into it, which Rich mentioned at the beginning of like the collaborative process of SEO. Mainly from a CRO standpoint, though, but obviously CRO and SEO are kind of interlinked. One gets you to the website, the other one helps them stay on it and like convert. So by combining the two ways, by letting other people look at the website, you get a second opinion, and that second opinion can be more valuable than yours because again, when you're looking at yourself, it can be really difficult to do it. What I normally do is I run the page through page speed insights. That lets you know, like the main thing that you want from user experience for that one is how long it takes to load and the cumulative layout shift. Because the CLS score is high, you can just refresh the page a couple times and it will tell you, well, basically what's wrong with it, because you will just know.
You can see it, can't you? Yeah, like menus jumping around or images like shifting. It might be
Yeah.
like a split second, but that's enough for Google to pick up.
Yeah, exactly. Then the other ways I would test it personally would be to look at different pages. So like click through different pages, because not every page is basically built in the same way. I mean, most of them will be, because obviously if you're on WordPress or Shopify, the theme itself would be responsive to whatever you've set it to. But you have to always be aware of like being able to test things yourself is a very large skill in SEO. So by having a look at different pages, you can then see how you interact with it, and by other accounts, your users will interact with it. One thing that mainly should be left to your developers, I would say, but obviously you can give it a go if you'd like, and if you're brave, is to do A/B testing and implement that. So you make 2 different versions of the site, you host them both, and then you have people check them. You can serve them to customers as well. If you have developers that are skilled enough to produce 2 different ones that are loaded in depending on the user's session. So you can then see how one performs versus how the other performs. And by doing that, you can tell if the changes that you're supposing would help are helping. And obviously vice versa, if the changes you gave that are not working at all. So that can also help in that way.
Nice. There you go. Lots of great advice there. I think that's a pretty good insight into user experience, and we've given you lots to go on. If you're listening at home, giving you lots to go off and explore yourselves, and lots to hopefully implement. So hopefully that was helpful. That's the main thing. That's what we're trying to do. Just create helpful bits of advice, sharing our experiences from the day-to-day grind. And yeah, thanks very much, Miko.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it was great. We'll be back again in the next few weeks to talk about technical SEO. Got lots to cover. It's a big subject. It's become more important, and it's important to cover it as well, because people get a bit scared by technical SEO. But this is what we're doing these episodes for, to sort of debunk the myths give you some nice, easy, simple tips and advice on how to nail it. So thanks very much for listening. We'll be back next time.